98 FM's Dublin Talks. Call 6797 981.
And good morning from Adrian Kennedy. How are you this morning? I hope everything is good with you, and I hope you had a good weekend, and I hope you can stay with us between now and midday today. Now, first off on the programme, it's been the talking point for most people for the entire weekend. At this stage, many of you would have seen the video of an event that took place in Dublin city centre on Saturday in a restaurant called Berlin D2. It was a ticketed brunch event that seemed to go a little bit crazy and sparked outrage among industry members and government officials. Footage doing the rounds on social media shows a barman standing on the bar and pouring alcohol into the mouths of dancing punters. This is in broad daylight, 4 o'clock in the afternoon. And, I mean, you can just hear it. It certainly wasn't calm. It was fairly wild by the looks of what we've seen. The baked brunch event, which took place in Berlin D2 restaurant in Dublin's Dame Lane, kicked off at 1 and ended at around 5 o'clock. But somebody released a video, and you have to remember that you can't do anything today without it being videoed. And somebody did take a video, and that video went viral over the weekend. We reached out over 24 hours ago to that particular restaurant, Berlin D2, looking for a spokesperson or a statement. We told them we wanted to be fair and balanced. So in the last 24 hours, we've heard nothing back. So I think they've gone to ground a little bit. They had to shut down their reviews section on their Facebook page because of the amount of extraordinarily negative reviews. The owner, one of the owners of the restaurant, Jay Burke, has responded to criticism of the behaviour of some customers on the premises. At the weekend, he told RTE that he was not excusing what had happened. But he said he's satisfied, having looked at CCTV from the venue, that the footage shared on social media does not fully reflect what happened in the bar on Saturday. Mr. Burke told RTE News that footage from inside the Dublin city centre premises shows that for the majority of the time people were complying with public health guidelines. Now, I would love to hear from you on 6797 981. You can text, you can WhatsApp, or you can send a WhatsApp voice note to 0877 98 98 98. My question to you is simple. What should be done to premises like this that appear to be flouting the rules? Has the backlash towards the bar and the organisers, one lady in particular, been justified? 6797 981 is our telephone number. You can also text, WhatsApp, or send a WhatsApp voice note to 0877 98 98 98. I have to say, not a lot of people, but certainly some people over the weekend have been saying these were young people, they don't get sick from this virus, and they should be people shouldn't be shaming them for having a bit of fun. Others completely and utterly disagree with that sentiment. I'm joined on the line by former Fine Gael TD Noel Rock, who was one of the first to take to social media over the weekend with this particular video. And in fact, Noel, when you initially posted the video over the weekend, you were kind of saying, I hope this isn't from a bar in Dublin, and then subsequently you confirmed that it was from a bar in Dublin on Saturday afternoon. And you hoped that it wasn't.
Yeah, I really did, Adrian. It's been a very tough time for a lot of business owners in the city. You know, people have made big sacrifices. People have kept their doors closed if they've been asked to keep their doors closed. People have had to, staff have had to take the dole and so on and so forth. So I really hope, given all the sacrifices that people had made, that a bar hadn't in Dublin gone rogue completely and kind of insulted, I suppose, everybody else who's made sacrifices. But alas, sadly, it was a bar in Dublin. And I think it's deeply disappointing. It's a slap in the face to people who have made these sacrifices. And to be honest with you, I just think it shows that some people can't be trusted. to look after bars.
But is that down to the owners or the bar staff or whatever, or is it down to the individuals who, were quite happy to take a shot of whatever it was he was pouring out from the bar?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot to be said for personal responsibility, Adrian, and at the end of the day, the main responsibility does rest with the individual. I.e., if you were in that room, Adrian, or I was in that room, and we said, look, sure, none of these social guidelines are being adhered to. We have a woman carrying around shots on a tray, giving them out. We have a fella pouring Jameson into the mouths of various people, etc., etc. No 2-metre distancing, no social guidelines being adhered to really whatsoever. We'd say, right, it's my responsibility to get out of here and to walk out.
And indeed, I understand that the person who videoed that video in the first place did leave after videoing it, and because that person didn't feel safe. So he took personal responsibility, if you like. But at the end of the day, some people are saying on social media, these are young people, they don't get sick from this virus, stop shaming them, that we shouldn't be shaming people for doing this.
I think that's a bit of a misunderstanding, I suppose, about what the virus does to people exactly. I mean, the virus can reside in people from ages, well, we don't know the minimum age, but we certainly know from a young age upwards. And the risk with it really is that the virus might reside in any of these 20-something-year-olds that were at this event, and they might meet an older person in the course of their day or their week. It might be a grandparent, might be a neighbour, might be a bus driver, might be a friend, whatever, a shopkeeper, whatever. And they might pass the virus on almost unknowingly. That's the real danger of the virus, that young people could be carrying it. Young people in particular could be carrying it unknowingly to themselves, and that they could pass it on to a person that's vulnerable. And nevertheless, young people aren't entirely immune from it either. I mean, we would have had a local case earlier on, back in April, where a fellow my age, no, I'm not especially young, but a fellow my age, 31, 32, died of it. So, I mean, it isn't the case necessarily that young people are entirely immune from it somehow either. Obviously, your odds are better if you're younger, but we shouldn't be playing a percentages game here with this. People should be acting responsibly, because we've seen it before, how quickly this can take off and how quickly it can end in hospitals being full and sadly deaths being registered.
Okay, and that's obviously, when we look at a weekend of cases of 266 between Saturday and Sunday, it is very concerning. But maybe can you blame an incident like this in this one particular bar?
No, if we look at the bar industry as a whole to date, has actually been quite conservative and quite good about these things. I don't know if you've had a chance to go inside a bar yourself.
I have, and have found the vast majority well organised, properly socially distanced, people sitting at tables, having drinks brought to them and all of that, and food and all of that, yes. So I've found that the majority of places that I've been in have been doing the right thing.
Yeah, exactly, and I've found the exact same myself. I found people have been bending over backwards to try and comply with these regulations. And that's actually why it's so damaging that an operation like this goes completely rogue and kind of undermines the efforts of a lot of other bar owners. Because remember, Adrian, there is a good percentage of people in the country who haven't set foot in a bar and who are, I suppose, seeing this video and imagining that every bar is being run like this, especially up in Dublin. And that simply isn't the case, obviously. And I think we need to kind of push back against that as well by coming down like a ton of bricks on bars like this that do go rogue, because that simply isn't acceptable.
What would you like to see being done specifically to this bar? And by the way, there's no suggestion that this hasn't happened in other places. It just so happens that videos haven't been leaked, perhaps. But with this specific bar, who accept that what we saw on this video did happen, what would you like to see being done here?
Yeah, I think they have to be closed. I'm not sure for what duration, but I think a serious punishment has to be put against them. Otherwise, you know what will happen. Other bars or other people will start bending the rules here and there. We'll start adding a half an hour onto their closing times. We'll start letting people stand at the bar instead of sitting in a chair, etc., etc. Now, nobody that I've seen has been doing that so far, but the risk is there that if we don't punish this crowd properly for what I consider outrageous behaviour, then there's the potential for other bars to start, or other restaurants to start playing copycat. And I don't think anybody wants to see that. And I know the bar associations and the LDA and the DFI, they definitely don't want to see that. They're keen to get bars that are currently closed, and there are a great many of them in Dublin, Adrian, great many good bars in Dublin that are still closed, back open and back up and running in a safe way. But while you have to carry on like this from places like Berlin, that really undermines the case in favour of opening up these other bars that are still closed, whose staff are still sitting at home.
Okay, so you would like to see an example being made of this place?
Absolutely, no question about it.
And close for what, a month, 2 months, what?
Yeah. I think closed as long as there are closures in place for other bars in the country. I think this place should be closed as well, and I think that's the long and short of it. I know they're operating on a restaurant license, so they're technically considered a restaurant, but I think at least a month. I really do. I think what we saw there...
On what grounds, Noel? Do we have laws that can enable this restaurant to be closed down?
You'd have your regular licensing laws, of course. So bars and restaurants can be closed all the time for flouting health and safety rules. We see those being published regularly in the newspapers. So there would be grounds to close it, all right. There'd be grounds to close it if it was considered to be operating in a way that was incompatible with the laws and with the health and safety regulations. It's up to the discretion of An Garda Síochána locally and up to the discretion of the senior who would be in Pearse Street, I think. But that can be done, and it could be done kind of in the next few days if An Garda Síochána so wished.
Okay, so you believe that the authorities have the power to stop this business operating for a month as a punishment and as an example to others not to go down that road, and for them to realise that there are implications of allowing this sort of behaviour?
Well, this is it, yeah. I mean, I listened to one of the people who's involved in the operation. He was speaking, I think it was last night or this morning, and he was saying it was only 20 seconds of madness and trying to downplay the whole event and trying to make it sound like it was kind of harmless and a misunderstanding. That's all nonsense. This event was pre-arranged. It was pre-advertised. It was advertised in a way, a boozy brunch type of thing. It was quite clear, bar the bit of tape on the ground, that, from all the videos I saw, and I posted about 4 of them on Facebook. I received about 15 of them in total. This was ongoing. This was people going around carrying shots on trays, everyone leaning into the tray, nobody social distancing at all, people up off their chairs, blah, blah, blah. The video that's famous and the one from the front of the papers today is someone pouring shots into the mouths of people. Come on.
Okay, let me read a message just finally, Noel, before I let you go. This message just came in to me a second ago, and it says, I used to work for Berlin D2 as the booker, and I think it's ridiculous that the guys who work there are getting death threats, etc. It is ultimately the manager's responsibility to police the event and pull it when it got too crazy. I can tell you the drink pouring from the barman was a thing we were known for in Berlin D2, the party atmosphere and so on, but wasn't a good idea during a pandemic. Either way, the promoters should have known better than to throw a party like that, and the manager should have known better than to team up with the promoter and let it happen in the first place. Both are at fault. And just the first bit of that message, people involved in that video, we understand some have gotten death threats. That's what happens when you shame a place like this.
Well, look, I think, like we said at the start, Adrian, I think the ultimate responsibility is personal responsibility. So I think that personal responsibility, it resides with the manager, it resides with the owner, but it also resides with the workers as well, and it also resides with the people who are in there. I think everyone has a role to play in saying, you know what, actually, this isn't safe. I'm not doing this, or I'm out of here. So, the barman wasn't obliged to get on the bar and pour shots into people's mouths. That's not in anybody's contract anywhere. They might have been known for that, but that's in a pre-coronavirus time. They're not obliged to do that. So
and what about the argument? And in fact, I'm about to play a voice note from somebody saying that what happened in the bar is no different to the countless house parties that have been held around the country.
Well, look, the whole point, I suppose, of bars and restaurants reopening is that the argument is that they're a safe environment, right, Adrian? And the argument is that they're going to adhere to social distancing and adhere to guidelines around masks and so on and so forth. Whereas we've all been saying throughout this that house parties obviously can't do any of that, so therefore don't have house parties. So if we have a bar that isn't complying with those promises, or a restaurant that isn't complying with those promises around social guidelines, around social distancing, around mask wearing, etc., well, then I think we have to come down on it like a ton of bricks. Otherwise, it's going to be all bars and all restaurants that'll end up being closed again. And that's not a position that I want us to end up in, to be honest with you.
All right, Noel Rock, thank you very much indeed for talking to us on 98 FM. This is the WhatsApp voice note I was referring to, and this is Thomas saying that what happened in the bar is no different than a house party.
people are going to do that in the pubs. Them fellas that are all drinking there and all on top of each other saying there's no distance and this, that and other. If that pub wasn't open, they're going to be doing it in the house party. It's going to be done no matter where they go. So you just need to get over that. And we just need to learn to live with this virus and forget about it. Move on with our life. I'm from Laois. I have two brothers. I have two premises. Pub restaurants are closed down again in lockdown. And it's absolutely ridiculous. People just need to get on with their life and get over it. If that pub wasn't open the weekend, them lads would have still got together and went to a house party somewhere and would have done the very same thing in the house party. So there's no difference whatsoever. Just go up and move on.
All right, Thomas, thank you. Now, Brian, you think people are just fed up, fatigued with the restrictions, and you can see how something like this would happen?
Yeah, I can indeed, because it's been going on for 5 months, and at this stage, people are just fed up. And as regards what that WhatsApp voice note from Thomas there, I think he has a point. I mean, if that wasn't in the pub, it would be a house party. You know what I mean? And I know cases have come from house parties, and sadly that's the case. But I just think it's a case of I think, like I said, a moment of madness. I think people are frustrated and they're letting their hair down. You know what I mean? They're letting off steam. You know what I mean?
Okay, so a moment of madness that happened to have been captured on video for the world to see. Yeah. I mean, you have to accept, Brian, that scenes like that we can't be having at the minute.
Yeah, I understand that. But like I said, I just saw part of the was caught on video, and that was it. And it's just like I said, it's just people frustrated. And people, I think, as Thomas said, I think we need to live with the virus, because from what I'm hearing, even the figures are given out, regards the number of cases. Like when I look at yesterday, 66. I looked at something yesterday, 34 men, 29 women. That's 63, not 66. You know what I mean? And that's
right. Okay, but that's kind of splitting hairs here. But there were 200 cases on Saturday, 66 cases yesterday. The Saturday figure, the highest since May. Yeah. You have to be concerned about that, are you not?
I would be, yeah. But I mean, but like that's a lot of that's linked to, the meat factories and the direct provision centres. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? I mean, as I said in my comment, there's been no clusters. Since the pubs reopened serving food, there's been no clusters linked to pubs serving food. That's the argument I'm coming up with. You know what I mean?
Okay, but what we're discovering, in fact, I'm going to be talking to a leading professor in a couple of minutes who is arguing that we can't live alongside this virus. We need to get rid of it altogether. And living aside it is producing 266 cases in one weekend.
Yeah, that's it. And that's the unfortunate thing. But then where those? I mean, majority of those cases in one particular area, aren't they?
No. In fact, a percentage are, but it's spread across the whole country.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, which are 56 in Dublin, if I remember.
Yes, that's right, yeah.
Yeah.
Now, proportionately, that's not as high as it is in Kildare, which has a much smaller population than Dublin does. But do you still believe, even though we're having these high cases, that we need to live alongside it?
I think it needs to be. I think it needs to be, even if they do it on a trial basis for a while. You know what I mean? And see what happens, and then if they need to pull back in, do that. You know what I mean? Just do it. Just run with it for a while and see what happens. And if they take cases, do spike up, pull back in there. You know what I mean?
All right, Brian, thank you for your call. Neil, I'll take your call straight after the break if you can stay with me. Mark sent me this WhatsApp voice note to 0877 98 98 98.
I think when a premises is operating on a restaurant licence, it should be fined €2,000 and closed for 2 weeks for this behaviour.
Okay, what do you think should happen to companies who allow this sort of thing to go on? We'll take a quick break. We're back in a sec.
Daily COVID-19 discussion and information. This is 98FM's Dublin Talks with Adrian Kennedy.
We're talking about a video that went viral over the weekend. of a get-together on Saturday afternoon, broad daylight, not even late at night actually as it happens. The Baked Brunch event, which took place in Berlin D2 restaurant on just off Dublin's Dame Lane, kicked off at 1 o'clock and ended at around 5. And in fact, I got a message in a moment ago, and we were talking about how Dublin restaurateur Jay Burke, who's involved in the venue, said over the weekend that he looked at CCTV from the Berlin venue, that the footage shared on social media does not fully reflect what happened in the bar on Saturday. And this message came in to me. 20 seconds of madness is how it's been described. But here's another thing. The Eventbrite, which was the promotion of it in advance, says doors will be closed at 1 p.m, so don't be late. The event ran until after 4 p.m, so even in and itself, that is almost twice the advised sitting time. In other words, you're meant to be in a place, this is the theory anyway, for 105 minutes. 3 hours is a lot more than 105 minutes, let alone anything else. Neil, you're on 98 FM. How are you, Neil?
Not too bad. It's Monday again.
Indeed it is.
I'm feeling too intelligent listening to some people and watching some videos from boozers during the weekend. It's frightening, really. People saying, we'll just live with it. We'll live with this fire. It's grand. Basically what they're saying is, a few people will die of it. That's fine as long as I get to have my beer. You know what I mean? It's the conversation going on is a bit worrying because the defence is, well, look, if it doesn't happen in place A, it's going to happen in place B. If it happens at all, you're not going to be able to do anything. This is the point. If I have 50 people around my house and we're pouring shots on each other and all sorts of stuff, now that very rarely happens, in general, pre-COVID times, it's more civilised. But if that happens and happens too much, all of these things are going to be shut down. What are we going to do then?
So, this particular incident in this particular bar, and by the way, I'm under no illusion that stuff like that has happened in other parts of the country. It just so happens that people didn't release any videos from it. How do you stop it? Is it by setting an example and shutting this place down for a month or whatever?
Yeah, that was my reply to the Facebook this morning. Was it's the only way you can get it is to get at the bottom line. That's it. They obviously don't care about people. Like this pub doesn't care about their customers. They just let them in, stand as close as you want, and we'll get you hammered. Like that's no care at all to their customers. There's no duty of care by the people working behind the bar. Now, if that's 20 seconds in a 4-hour thing, you're right, they're there too long. They're still standing too close. They're not taking care of people. They're doing it for money, and it's very, very scummy. And look, we're not very good at following rules as a species of people, the Irish, anyway. So, if this stuff keeps happening, we won't be able to have nice things anymore, and we'll be stuck back in our house. It's just such a worry. And you hear your man talking about how he looked at CCTV and all that. He's a chancer as well. Like, you've got a professor coming on. And I think
I did see photographs from earlier in the afternoon, and everybody is sitting down at tables and socially distancing, and they had tape on the ground and everything else. So, from that point of view, it was being run properly up to a point.
Yeah, well, look, tape doesn't help. Tape isn't magic. That wasn't just 20 seconds in the afternoon. You know what I mean? You don't all of a sudden everyone get up at once and charge the bar. That doesn't happen at once. So that was happening as soon as the alcohol was getting into the system. It happened to all of us pre-COVID. It happened all the time. But we have to live in the world we're in now. And I think the most important thing is you've got a professor coming on. I think everyone needs to listen to that and listen to it very carefully, because there's too much talking back and forth. The case for just in Kildare, so shut Kildare down. The cases are just in Dublin, so everyone in Limerick's fine. You know what I mean? We've got to get rid of this thing, because if we can't get rid of it, we can't live with it. We just can't live with it. There's any chance of people dying, getting sick, long-term illnesses, all this sort of stuff. And we've got 200 cases over the weekend, 60-something yesterday as well. Like, we just can't keep going the way we're going.
Okay, let me read a message that I've been asked to read out to you, and it says, will you tell your man to take off his tinfoil hat and live life? You've only got one shot at it.
My tinfoil hat, yeah. No, it's I'm trying to hang on to whatever hair I have up there, but no, listen, it's not. It's more serious than funny messages into radio stations. It's all about staying alive, taking care of each other. Hopefully this is short term. Hopefully this is relatively short term in our lifetime. But I don't want anyone listening, anyone who I know, to be affected by this. And if people keep doing what they're doing, whether it's house parties, whether it's going to boozers for 4 hours and jumping off each other, this is going to extend the amount of time we have this. We can't live with it. If we say we're going to live with it, that means we're happy for hospitals to get filled up. We're happy for frontline workers to take the brunt of this. We're happy for people to die, and I'm personally not.
Okay, so what do you say to this message then? We are completely fed up with this. What do you want us to do? We can't do this, we can't do that. It's like being in prison. I'm sick of it, says this message. I couldn't even have a decent pint for my father's funeral last month. Either way, where I live, the house parties are unbelievable. They happen every single weekend. Some people I know transferred their sheds into home bars. If there's a selection of bars open, it can be strict and it would reduce those parties. It's not rocket science.
Well, let's take it one step at a time there. This isn't prison, okay? Look, it's rotten for everybody, especially if you're, in the early days, if you were over, whatever it was, 70 and you were stuck in your house and you couldn't leave. That was really, really tough. The generation that took care of us, we couldn't take care of them at that time. Mm-hmm. This is not prison. It's unfortunate that, you can't have a pint and all this sort of stuff. But it's the way it is. It's not a government trying to take over. It's not tinfoil hat. It's not anything like that. It's trying to protect the people of this country. That's what it's all about.
But you do understand how people are just getting fed up. I mean, this has gone on five and a half months now.
Well, I don't get me wrong. I'm not having the time of my life here. Not being able to see mates and all that sort of stuff. Nobody is. You know what I mean? Everyone is in the exact same boat. And that should be bringing us together, going, look, I know what you're going through. You know what I'm going through. I know what everyone listening is going through. It's painful. It's tough. It's rotten. It's not easy. Some people are losing jobs and all this sort of stuff. It's not easy at all. But the bigger picture here is I don't want anyone to get sick. I don't want anyone to die. I don't want you to get unwell. All this sort of stuff. So it's up to us as a country to take care of each other. That's what it's all about.
Okay, stay there for 1 second, Neil, and I want to bring in some more calls, but stay with me for a second. Jason, you're on 98 FM. Hi, Jason.
Good morning, Adrian.
Now, Jason, what did you want to say on this?
Is there any chance we can stop with all this scaremongering? Where are these deaths? If there was healthy people dropping dead in the middle of the street, I could understand. We've had no severe deaths in a long time. Okay, most countries around the world are now revising down their deaths because they lumped everybody into it. At the start of the pandemic...
Okay, but sorry, Jason.
Sorry, Adrian. At the start of the pandemic, we didn't know what was happening, okay? It seemed to hit the old and the vulnerable very, very hard. We know that now. There's no young people dropping in the streets. The panic out there is unbearable. I was away the weekend, Adrian, and we went into a place, we were invited in, we were staying in the hotel next door, and the way the woman came over to me, now, by the way, she'd no mask, no PPE on her herself, but she swore I told her I had Ebola. She set up a cordon around us to try and push us out of the hotel. Now, there was nobody in the place. The panic it's right through the country, and it's scary. You're scared in a lot of people, you are. These are so-called experts are telling us one day masks are no good, they'll never do anything for us, and then in another breath they're telling us everybody put masks on.
Okay, but here's the reality of it. Yes, young people aren't dropping dead on the streets, okay? We do know some people can be affected worse than others. We do know that while there has been a slight increase in the amount of people in hospital, it's not a dramatic increase in the number of people being treated in hospital.
Our hospitals were never full, Adrian. There was a whole lot of hospitals were never full.
They were nearly.
Nearly, but they were never full.
They weren't
We've
far
about
off
5 in ICU now, in a population of what, just under 5 million.
But the point is, Jason, that's because of the way we dealt with it, because we went into lockdown.
No, the point, though, it is the way it is because it's not as severe as people are making it out to be. The cold and the flu are killing more people. Starvation kills more people. So what, do we all close all the restaurants and send all that food over? I mean, we could cure it. People just need to listen to the experts. Wash yourself. Wash your hands with soapy water. It kills the stuff. Put sanitizer on your hands. It kills the stuff. Locking down this country is going to kill more people than this virus ever did. Like, we lose on average of probably 90 people a day in this country as it is, just through natural thing. Like, what's your death rates now since COVID? Is it plus, or is it all just added in together?
Okay, stay there for 1 second. Okay, stay there for 1 second. One of the the problems when a video like this goes viral is the shaming that goes on, and people being ridiculed. And Emma, that's the point that you wanted to highlight on a slightly different issue, is the way in which, with absolute vitriol, people have been condemning the organisers of this event.
I think it's an absolute disgrace, and I actually think that that's what the topic of the show should have been this morning. I really do. I was absolutely horrified. I have no affiliation with the influencer. I've never been to Berlin D2 before. But when I was going online yesterday reading all these comments by these vicious keyboard warriors condemning this girl and the other organisers, and I was absolutely disgusted. What happened to Caroline?
I did read a lot of the comments, and yes, I agree with you. Some of the commentary was horrific. It was an absolute disgrace. I don't understand. This should be mediated online. There should be some laws in place for these keyboard warriors. I personally know, and I fully believe that it's not COVID-19 that's going to bring Ireland to its knees. It's going to be people's mental health after this pandemic, and I really truly do believe this. I know. So you don't think people should have been upset by that video, no?
People can be upset. People can be obsessed, but what happened is, be kind. Caroline, in fact, committed suicide over this only a number of months ago. They tore this influencer's morals, her appearance, her looks, every single thing about it. She obviously didn't really think that she was doing too much wrong, because she was the one. People were copying the videos from her story, because I was watching the story as the day was going on. I don't understand how it's allowed. I really genuinely don't. Look, they made a mistake. That's it. There's no way that we should all be backing up and sharing stuff and just completely condemning people and tearing them apart. We're human. And I agree with the caller before you. I think that there is a huge amount of scaremongering going on. I don't think the numbers genuinely reflect, the amount of people that have passed away. And I think that what we should be looking at as well when we're bringing out the numbers of deaths from COVID is the actual, increase in suicide rates across Ireland. I myself know 3 people who committed suicide in a 5-week period.
Really?
Yes. And I just think, mental health, we weren't able to deal with the mental health services, the numbers that were coming from Jigsaw's closing, all these other things around Ireland at the moment, and that's what we need to be focusing on. And I genuinely do believe it. I know people who have been turned away from mental health services and put on 24-month waiting lists, and we are tearing people apart over, people are going mad over this barman giving death threats to people.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with you that to be issuing death threats, or to be keyboard warrior death threats against people is bang out of order. However, Emma, a lot of people believe that this particular venue should be shut down for a month as an example to others not to go down that road.
Well, maybe it is, but there is scaremongering and fearmongering going on as well. Look at the Black Lives Matter. How many thousands people were at that Black Lives Matter where everyone was protesting about? The numbers didn't increase 2 weeks later. They didn't increase 3 weeks later. I know for a fact, someone who works in a nursing home, and when the testing went around, there was nobody who displayed any symptoms of COVID in this nursing home. And 3 people in their 80s were diagnosed with COVID-19 and they hadn't got one symptom. They didn't have to go to hospital, they didn't have to get treatment, they didn't have to up the medication. And these were people in their 80s. And this is a good friend of mine who works in a nursing home. I do think that there's a lot of scaremongering around it. Leo Varadkar came out himself and said that the numbers, 1,700 plus numbers, that they weren't actually genuinely reflective of the amount of people who had or died of COVID-19 within Ireland. Yes, those numbers haven't been reduced.
All right, Emma, thanks very much indeed for your call. I have to take a quick break. Stephen, I'll take your call straight after the break. If you want to get involved in this conversation, call me now on 6797 981. You can also send a WhatsApp voice note to 0877 98 98 98, like Bob just did.
Hey, that's Bob. They should either fine them, massively fine, and also double their licence fees. And that wouldn't be long, storing the crap with the rest of them. So if you're going to be fined 10 or 20 grand, plus double your fees, and then maybe they tell you, look, if you do step out of line again, that's it, we take our licence off you altogether, and you're gone. One or two strikes and you're out. Good luck.
All right, thank you very much indeed. Back in a sec.
Up-to-date coronavirus discussion for Dublin. This is 98 FM's Dublin Talks with Adrian Kennedy.
A huge reaction to what we've been talking about, and that is the baked brunch event which took place in Berlin D2 restaurant over the weekend, Saturday afternoon. You had to be there, well, you had to have tickets in advance. You had to be there before 1, and it was due to end at around 4, and then somebody decided to hop up in a bar and pour shots into people's mouths as they partied away. Bob thinks there should be no mercy.
Hey, lads, Bob. They should either fine them massively.
Oh, sorry, I played that already. My apologies. This is Ger. It is.
I just think the whole nation is turning into a load of sheep. Don't go here, don't go there. Stay 2 meters away from everybody else. Open up everywhere. Don't corral people into places.
All right, Ger, thanks very much indeed. Stephen, you're on 98 FM. How are you, Stephen? Hello, Stephen. Oh, he's not there for some reason. Sarah, you're on 98 FM. How are you, Sarah?
Hi, how are you?
Your point is similar to that last lady, that that it's not in any way helpful to be trolling the people that were involved in that event on Saturday. And I did see some of it, and some of it was absolutely horrific.
Yeah, it's horrible. I just think it's disgusting that people sit there and write them horrible comments because, yeah, they made a mistake, but now it's all over social media. They have to read all these awful comments, and it really affects people's mental health. And I think that, like, if social media wasn't there and there wasn't all these comments, like, none of that would actually be said to people's faces, and it'd just be dealt with, like, in a form of punishment, and it would be over with. But this will just keep going now, and, like, God knows who it's going to affect. It's going to be horrible.
Yeah, no, I 100% agree with you. Some of the commentary I read about the organisers, about the venue itself, about the barman, all of it was just horrible. Stuff I wouldn't even quote on the radio. It was that bad. But by contrast, Sarah, you've heard the expression, if you put your hand out to be slapped. And unfortunately, that video did put all their hands out to be slapped.
Oh, yeah, I know. I think it's disgraceful what they did as well. But then again, I wouldn't ever get online and write that kind of horrible stuff to people. I'm sure they feel bad about it, and I hope they get punished for it, and I hope they're made an example of. But it's just, yeah, you can't take it to that level and just bash people like that.
I agree with you when it comes to getting personal, and so, like I said, some of the comments I couldn't even read out on air. But let me read a message that's just come into me, Sarah, and it says, "Hi Adrian, I'm a nurse working in the community, and what I saw over the weekend in that bar is an absolute disgrace. The work that is being put in across the health service is massive. I am fed up with everyone saying that the scaremongering is huge. Is it not better to err on the side of caution than to try and deal with an even bigger problem if the rules aren't followed?"
Yeah, I totally agree with her as well. I think that people need to follow the rules, and I think what they did was disgraceful and they deserve to be punished. I just don't like that online bashing.
Yeah, no, I agree.
hate it.
Yeah.
It's scary, like. Yeah,
okay, in terms of punishment, you would like to see this place being closed down, would you?
Yeah, I think they should be punished. I don't know what they should do, but they definitely should be punished. But yeah, I just hope that people, like, I just hope nothing happens to those people. Like, I hope they don't end up committing suicide or end up getting beaten up out in public, because that's what's going to happen.
And I, like I said, I totally agree that having this sort of vitriol against individuals and naming individuals and all of that is just not helpful at all. Mark, you're living in County Laois, where you're currently under restricted movement with a kind of sort of a lockdown, and you're furious over this whole thing.
Yeah, just seeing everything going on, Adrian. I suppose there's a lot of good friends of mine who have business in Portlaois, pubs and restaurants, and I suppose this is the second time that they're locked down, and I don't think they're going to come back out of this. And then when you see people flouting the system in Dublin, it's absolutely crazy to see it. As I said, a good friends of mine, they might never reopen their doors again. And then to see this, that people that won't abide by the rules, to see might get away with this, is absolutely ridiculous, to be honest.
And obviously, yes, life is continuing as normal in Dublin, while people like yourselves in Laois probably feel you're being punished for something you didn't do.
Yeah, I suppose Laois, Offaly and Kildare, we feel like we're being punished, and there's a lot of talk going around Portlaois, especially where I'm from, people saying that we're going to get extended another 2-week lockdown because of the cases that's in the direct provision centres locally and within the meat factories locally as well. And when I'm just absolutely appalled. Words can't describe how I feel towards the whole system, that we feel that we're being targeted, for the want of a better word, for everything else that's going on in the whole country.
stay there for a second, Mark. Let's have a listen to this from Irene.
I completely disagree with that guy about the house parties. Like, that doesn't make it okay. People need to cop onto themselves and realise this is a pandemic. We are going to have a second wave. There's going to be another lockdown, and they need to take it seriously that people have actually died from this. Young people as well as old people. You have to take it seriously and cop onto yourselves. It's ridiculous the way people are going on.
All right, now, Stephen, you're on 98 FM. Hi, Stephen.
Good morning, Adrian. How are things?
Good, thank you. What is your reaction to this whole thing?
My opinion on all of this, all right? I'll tell you something for a start, all right? One, before anyone starts saying anything about my opinion, I've lost my main job because of this. My secondary job is I'm a door supervisor at the weekends. So I work in all these bars around the Temple Bar area, okay? Now, what I think should be done as regards the penalisation for the bar over this is basically shut them down. Like these wealthy owners and stuff like that of these bars, what they're going to end up doing in 6 months' time anyways, the premises will be there and they'll reopen the bar under a different name. But they should be put through the ring and the rigmarole of having to go through the whole solicitor's fees and this, that and the other, of basically having to reopen again under a new name.
Even though it has been described as, and in fact the one of the men involved in it has described how, let me just quote this, he was speaking on RTE this morning, Jay Burke said he was embarrassed but added that he's annoyed by calls for the venue to lose their alcohol licence.
Come here to me, Adrian. You mentioned there a moments ago, you were talking to one of the lads there saying that about the Jay Burke fella called into you or wrote into somewhere or something like that saying the 20 seconds of madness doesn't reflect the whole. Come here to me. I've worked in these bars, do you know what I mean, for a decade. It doesn't just escalate to a point where 20 seconds of madness, he just hops up onto the edge of the bar and starts, do you know what I mean, pouring drink out in people's necks. Like, do you know what I mean? That was a long time coming thing. But it's like the other side of it as well. People are turning around and saying they feel like they're in a prison at home. They can't do this, that and the other. There's an old saying, Adrian, right? And the old saying goes like this: don't make your problem my problem. Just because you feel that way, we're all in the same boat. Every single one of us. We're all having to do the same thing here. So people turn around and transferring their idea of that, you know, they're making their problem, you know, into my problem by putting me at risk and putting everyone else at risk by being so careless, doing the likes of these things. I mean, there's absolutely no reason for that in the bar.
Okay, so they need to be made a public example of, so that other premises.
Serious example of.
Okay, so that other premises don't go down that road.
Yeah.
Okay, all right. Let me play some WhatsApp voice notes. This is Eamon.
Hi, Adrian. It's Eamon here. I think if places like this are going to flaunt the rules, that they should be shut down for a month and they don't get any government aid in that time. And they'll think twice the next time. Cheers, thanks.
All right, and this is Karen.
Adrian, if this place wants to be treated like a pub or a nightclub, or they want to act like a pub or a nightclub, they should be treated like one. They shouldn't be allowed to, they should be closed and not allowed to open back up until it's safe to do so, the same as every other pub and nightclub in Ireland. It's an absolute disgrace what went on there at the weekend, and people justifying it, saying it's happening in house parties. Look, we can't control what happens in house parties, what idiots do in their own homes. You have no control over that. But the government surely do have some control over what happens in establishments like pubs, like nightclubs, and like this absolute dump at the weekend.
All right, Karen, thank you. This is Jimmy.
Hello, Adrian. Jim here. Look, the simple thing is, if the pub breaks the law like the Berlin, they should be made pay for everybody's tests on the premises and fined. And the only way out of this is you've got to open the pubs and govern them correctly and make them pay if they breach it. Because this disease is here. It's not here for a year or two. It's here for life. We're never getting rid of it. And until they have some sort of means of combating it, that's the way things have to be done. And the under 30s at the moment don't give a rat's ass because they think they're untouchable. You know what I mean? They just don't care. And they'll spread it like butter on a piece of bread.
And finally, this is from Deborah.
Hiya, Jeremy. It makes me laugh. There's street parties every week across Dublin and surrounding areas. People are so fed up now at this stage. And if the bars were allowed open properly, you wouldn't have as many in one bar. Instead, you'd have it spread across, you know, all of the bars. I mean, how many bars have we got in Dublin or surrounding areas? And you'd have limited people in each bar, which would Stop all this chaos. I mean, look, we can't blame people now. We're all so fed up. You know, I've walked all the way through it. I've lost my mum and my mother-in-law through it. And, you know, people just need to just live with it now. Start living with it. Do the best you can throughout the day. You know, do your bit of social distancing, and we will get through this. Thanks, Jeremy.
Thank you, Deborah. We're going to take a quick break. On the way, after the break, I'm going to be talking to a leading professor who says we need to get cases here in Ireland down to zero.
98.
It's 11 o'clock across Dublin. Good morning. This is Adrian Kennedy. This is 98 FM's Dublin Talks. And this is Emma with Monday's top headlines.
Thanks, Adrian. Good morning. The Health Minister says he's very hopeful the restrictions in the Midlands will be lifted on Sunday. That's when the partial lockdown in Kildare, Laois and Offaly is scheduled to end. A leading immunologist says he doesn't think it's wise to reopen schools over the next 2 weeks. The issue of reopening schools is set to be one of the topics discussed at a meeting of public health officials today. A popular Dublin restaurant has posted on Twitter about being asked whether it offers influencer rates. Le Panesh on the Grand Canal says it was surprised by the cheeky mail, saying it's a small business and that freebies or big discounts in these times are hard to justify. And apparently people from Dublin and the North should change the way they speak so Alexa can understand them. The Amazon smart speaker struggles to make sense of the accents, according to a study by Uswitch. It looked at 30 cities across the UK and Ireland and found the Dublin and Belfast accents are the hardest for the device to grasp. And now you're up to date on 98.
98 FM's Dublin Talks. Call 6797 981.
And this is Adrian Kennedy with you until midday today. The current programme of rolling lockdowns implemented by the government is not working, according to a leading professor. Local lockdowns have been put in place in Kildare, Laois and Offaly after a rise in COVID-19 cases over the past month. Now, as you may know, the National Public Health Emergency Team is to meet later today to discuss what further measures are needed to control the spread of COVID-19. Over the weekend, you will undoubtedly know that there were 200 cases announced on Saturday, 66 cases yesterday, and it comes after a week of very high case numbers. Kildare once again recorded the highest number of cases. Dublin had the second highest, although with a much larger population, proportionately it's much less. Anyhow, I want to find out what this country needs to do in order to deal with this problem. And I'm joined on the line by Professor Anthony Staines, who's a professor in health systems at DCU. He has been on this programme on a number of occasions. And Professor Staines, good morning and welcome to the programme. And let me begin by getting your reaction, as we have been from our listeners over the last hour, to that video that went viral over the weekend.
I must say I was shocked. Obviously, I don't know the context of it, but it seemed to show somebody standing in a bar pouring presumably alcohol onto other people, crowded very closely together. And it just looked like something that, given things the way they are now, is impossibly risky and is putting everyone in the bar and staff in the bar at risk. And that sort of thing really should not be happening at the moment.
Now, this is obviously one video. Anecdotally, incidents like this have been happening in other parts of the country. Does that highlight to you that restaurants and bars just can't be open at this moment?
My experience is this. Most of the pubs and restaurants that are open very responsibly. There are complete chancers out there, and I don't know what the story was in the case of this particular bar, but there are areas where there's serious problems and behaviour going on, but they seem to be a very small minority. Looking at my own area, this is where I'm mostly staying, the very large events we've had locally have included a party for a 1-year-old baby, a 65th birthday party, and a 35th wedding anniversary. So it's not just the stereotype of mad young things going out in the evening getting plastered. It's much more complicated than that. But it says to every one of us that we have to manage this. There's risk of infection anywhere you go, particularly where it's crowded, where you're indoors, where people are maybe singing, maybe doing exercise, maybe just talking a lot. All of these are situations where this virus can spread. And it's very much in our interest. If we want to open the schools, I mean, it is as basic as that. I think everybody would like schools to be open. I think it would be very good for the kids if our schools were able to open at the beginning of September. If we have major outbreaks like this, it will challenge opening the schools in some areas in the first place, and will also challenge keeping the schools open. Because if there's an outbreak in a school, what do we do in that school? Do we close it? Do we carry on? What's the plan? And the more infection there is, the harder it's going to be to keep the schools open. So it's up to all of us to make sure that can happen.
Now, we're speaking after a weekend where we saw 200 cases on Saturday, 66 cases yesterday, and you've been quoted as saying that the current programme of rolling lockdowns implemented by the government is not working. You believe that?
I think the current programme of rolling lockdowns is likely to be required for the foreseeable future. It may or may not work. It's too early to say. What will happen is that it's going to cause havoc for the economy, for businesses. If you were in Kildare and you were a businessman, just getting your business back on its feet after a really, really difficult time, the last thing the Kildare business owner needed was to be suddenly told, actually, sorry, you're not opening. And if we have something like that moving around from county to county to county, which seems to be a risk, there was discussion about extending this to Tipperary, for example. Now that seems to have stopped. They don't seem to be doing that. But you can easily see that this could happen in Cork, this could happen in Donegal, this could happen in Sligo, this could happen in Dublin. And every time it happens, it sends the economy in that area back into a tailspin. So really, truly, we need to get ahead of this virus. We can't keep running around catching up with it, waiting for a major outbreak and then doing something. By the time we see a major outbreak, we're looking at infections for maybe 5 to 10 days before the outbreak turns up. We are well behind. And that's what's happening now. We are chasing an expanding outbreak. I think we will eventually get on top of it. But the way we're doing it is a way that really causes maximum damage.
Now,
the
National Public Health Emergency Team is meeting today to make recommendations to government. The Cabinet meeting tomorrow. What would you like to see come out of this meeting in terms of recommendations for dealing with what has been a fairly dramatic increase in cases over the last week or two?
I think the recommendation needs to be that we move from a strategy that says we're going to live with this virus to a strategy that says we're going to drive this virus down to zero. Living with the virus hasn't worked. That's where we're getting these outbreaks from. Driving down to zero is challenging and might not work. There isn't a guarantee there, but it's likely to work.
But does driving it down to zero involve another lockdown?
No. That would be a serious mistake. We brought in the lockdowns because we had a crisis that might overwhelm our health service. We brought in the lockdowns because we were looking at northern Italy, where there were people dying waiting for intensive care beds. We looked at New York, where there were literally dead bodies in refrigerated trucks on the side of the road. The lockdown was to prevent that, and it worked. We have to be much smarter.
So how can you drive cases down to zero, which, by the way, a couple of weeks ago we were nearly at? How do you do that whilst keeping the country open?
We do on the health side a much more aggressive test, track, isolate and test process. So we put a lot more resources into that. And that will cost millions. But this virus is costing us billions. So it's cheap at the price. We push social distancing, we push hand hygiene, we push mask wearing. WHO came out in the middle of last week and WHO have not recommended masks for the general public up to now, but they have changed their advice in the last week and they've caught up with what I and many of my colleagues think the science shows. We have experience dealing with viral outbreaks in much worse situations than a rich country in Europe. We have dealt successfully with viral outbreaks in Western Africa. We've dealt successfully with outbreaks of cholera in Haiti after an earthquake, when the whole health service, more or less, had been flattened. This can be done. This can be brought down to zero, but it has to be decided by the government. It needs political leadership. I think the Irish people will get behind it. I think we can see a way to keeping large parts, not all. I don't see nightclubs opening, for example. And I take no joy in that. Nightclubs are great places to have fun, but I don't see nightclubs opening for the foreseeable future. But we can keep a large part of our economy open in a very regulated way. We also need to bring in a rule, as they've done, I gather, in Belgium, that if you run a pub in Belgium, there are rules about how you and your customers behave. And if they're broken, you're closed for a fortnight. Nothing like that happens here. But the licensed vintners want that. Restaurant Association wants that, because this damages all of them.
So, in terms of this meeting today, you would like to see a commitment from government coming out of this that we are going to drive this virus down to zero here in Ireland?
Yes. We would recommend to the government a change in policy, because the current policy is not getting us where we need to be. And the policy we suggest is going to zero, because that can be done. Now, we've seen in New Zealand that doesn't mean you never get any outbreaks ever again. New Zealand has had an outbreak imported from outside the country. They don't yet know how. And that's likely to happen here. It's likely to happen anywhere this is done in the future. But they haven't had to close the whole country. It's very inconvenient if you're in Auckland. Very inconvenient. But the rest of the country is more or less continuing. And Auckland will recover. It will be brought under control in Auckland and be back to business as usual. They're having rugby matches in New Zealand. We're a long way off having, an All-Ireland final here, but there's no reason we couldn't.
One of the things the Chief Medical Officer has said over the weekend is, people are fatigued with COVID-19. We're fed up with it. And that is leading to people letting their guard down and so on with social distancing. How do you get people back on board again?
Well, we've talked with Susan Mickey, who is one of the leading social psychologists in the UK, who studied this phenomenon in great detail. And she gave evidence to the Oireachtas Committee last week. And really, this isn't a major part of the problem. The major part of the problem is confusion. What are people meant to be doing? And what is the objective of the policy? People can see the current policy is not working. This virus is spreading around the country. We're getting more cases. That is obvious to the general population, as it is obvious to me. If we can give people a clear, straightforward message, for example, with foreign travel, the message has been incomprehensible. I don't understand the green zones, the red zones, the quarantine rules, the travel rules. They make no sense to me at all. If we have a rule which says no non-essential foreign travel, that's very clear. I can understand that. And that kind of very clear messaging is essential in this. And political leadership. The government has substantial support behind it for doing something about this. The population aren't, because that's not their job. That's my job, the Department of Health's job, it's the government's job to understand how to do this. But once there's a clear message about how to do this, I think the population will get behind it. But they need that political leadership. They need that democratic accountability. It's no good people like me. I mean, I'm not elected to anything. It's no good people like me jumping up and down and saying, this is what we need to do. This has to come from the elected government. This has to come from the Taoiseach, the Tánaiste, the Minister. And they're the people who can lead this effectively and get us to a place where we can open our schools safely, which for all of us is a really high priority.
All right, well, we'll watch with interest what happens this week in terms of that advice and guidance from both NEFIT and from the government. But in the meantime, Professor Anthony Staines, thank you very much indeed for talking to us on 98 FM.
Thanks very much, Adrian. Much appreciated. Bye now.
All right, now let's just play a couple of your WhatsApp voice notes. This is Mark.
Hi, Adrian. Mark here in Kilkenny. Great show. That's pretty simple. We're heading for another lockdown because we can't be trusted to behave. Jesus Christ. I work in the hospital and we're seeing cases and cases and cases. Do people not realise? Do they have to see bodies in a mortuary before they realise what is going on? It just really does beggar belief. Cheers, Adrian.
All right, Mark, thank you. And this is from Tom.
Sorry, but I think your man is kind of, he's hoping. He's doing wishful thinking. I think we've done the whole social distancing, and at the start people were agreeable to it, the vast majority of people. But we have house parties now, and that's our big threat. And those who are doing the house parties are not going to do the social distancing or wear the masks. And his whole approach will rely on people sticking by rules which they're really fed up with, that they're not going to engage with now. So I think he needs to go back to the drawing board as well as the government, because his approach fully relies on the public in engaging in all the measures, and it's quite evident that the public aren't engaging. Not all of them, not the ones that are necessary. Those who get the disease are still likely to pass it on. So it doesn't seem practical at all.
All right, Tom, thank you very much indeed for your message. You're listening to 98 FM's Dublin Talks. This is Adrian Kennedy. We're here until midday today. Now, after the break, I'm going to be having a conversation that we've never had before. And it's something I know very little about, I have to be honest with you. And that is homeschooling. Now, we know over the months that the schools have been closed down, that there has been remote learning for children, where parents were trying to teach their kids. But how would you feel about taking that to a more formal level and to officially homeschool your children? I want to run a very quick text poll during the break and ask you that simple question. Would you be happy to homeschool your child or children? I'll be finding out how it actually works and whether or not it is practical straight after the break.
The sound of the city, from Perrystown to Portmarnock. This is 98 FM's Dublin Talks with Adrian Kennedy.
And we're here until midday today. As you will know, back in March, the schools closed and parents were forced into a situation of essentially homeschooling their children. Now, I know most of you have your fingers and toes crossed that the schools can and will reopen in a couple of weeks' time. But some parents, and we spoke about this on the programme last week, are feeling a little bit uneasy about the kids going back to school. And one lady who contacted us is a lady called Paige. And here's what she wrote to us last week. I was hoping you could bring up a topic on your show that I need help with. I'm a mother of two, aged 5 and 7. They're obviously due back to school soon, but I'm feeling uneasy about it. I would rather homeschool them, and I'm looking for advice on how to do that, and if anyone else feels the same. There hasn't been much news from the schools on the new ways of teaching, social distance and so on, and I don't want to send them back with everything going on. Am I alone with this, or do others feel the same? Does anyone have advice on how I can get myself started to homeschool them? And that was from a lady called Paige, who sent that into us last week. We were interested to read that a mother who has homeschooled her children has spoken out in the news today. Cleena Brophy is homeschooling parent of 2 children, now aged 12 and 10. And she spoke to the Journal today about the whole process. She said that in order to homeschool, you don't need to follow the national curriculum, you don't need to have a teaching degree, and you don't need to cover every subject done in a school. And I'm asking, as a parent, would this be something that you would consider? You can call us on 6797 981. You can also text, WhatsApp, or send a WhatsApp voice note to 0877 98 98 98. Now, the lady who sent me that email last week is a lady called Paige, and she joins me on the line. Paige, good morning to you.
Hi.
Now, You said in your email to us that your kids are due back in school, but you'd rather homeschool them because you're feeling uneasy about it. What are you feeling uneasy about?
I think it's just the whole thing, the whole change that there will be in the school. Like, my daughter's found it hard to adjust to the school in the first place, and now I feel like it's going to be completely different. And we haven't really got any proper updates from the schools on what's going to change, and like if their classes are going to be split up, or if they're going to be still going to their special needs assistant teachers during the day or stuff like that. There hasn't been any proper update on it.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know. I'm just afraid that there's going to be another outbreak, and then the schools are going to be closed again. So is there any point in even buying the new uniforms, which we don't know if they need, and buying the new books and paying the school registration fee and sending them back to school? Or would I be better off keeping them home and educating themselves and keeping them safe from everything else that'll be going on at the same time?
So, because of your unease about sending your children back to school, you're contemplating, in fact, I believe since you even sent us that email, that you've taken it a step further in terms of exploring the idea of homeschooling your children.
Yeah, I've printed out the home education TULSA form to apply for that as well. And then I don't know how the process happens. That's why I wanted to get a bit more information today on how hard it is if, like, you can be accepted to do it, and like what will stand in the way of being able to educate your children at home. But I feel like we've done it for a long time anyways. Like, they've been out of school for 7 months now, and I feel like we've done a great job doing it so far, so I don't see how it could be so hard to do it now in the future.
In terms of your qualifications or whatever, are you qualified as a teacher?
I'm not qualified as a teacher. I work in childcare, but I have an SNA qualification, so I can work as a special needs assistant in classrooms. And I have experience of working in a classroom and working in childcare, so I do have a little bit of knowledge on it. But I've really just done a lot more work on the homeschooling while they were off during the lockdown. Like, I just went.
And how did you find that? Because I was asking the question a couple of minutes ago about, how would parents feel about homeschooling, and the majority of people who texted us said no. They need to go back to school. Do you not feel that way? They need to go back to school?
At the same time, I do think like that. It can be stressful, especially when your child isn't grasping the homework or whatever it is. It is stressful, but it's all about taking the time to focus on it and know that, you kind of have to do it. Do you know what I mean? My daughter, she has some learning disabilities, and I just made it my mission to make more posters around the house like you would in school, and try and bring the school environment into the house, and that helps them learn. I think if you're just sitting down and saying, okay, do this homework, they're not going to grasp it as well, and it will be harder. Whereas if you bring the school environment into the house, then it might be a bit easier, because that's what I was doing during the lockdown.
Okay, so you obviously, unlike some parents, you found it relatively easy, did you?
I found it hard some days, like teachers would. Teachers are going to find it hard some days. And then other days, it was great. I actually really, really enjoyed sitting down with the children and having that time with them where we sit down and do things together. And just having that one-on-one time with them as well. Like, I do my eldest daughter's homework first, then I do my other daughter's homework. And I would actually pack them a lunch and everything. Like, I'd pack them a lunch, and then halfway through their work, I'd tell them it's lunchtime, they'd have their lunch, and then we'd come back and do work again. And they'd done PE, like yoga and meditation and lots of different things that they would normally do in school.
Okay, one of the things that a lot of children have missed about school is their friends and the social aspect of being at school. If you were to homeschool your children, do you not worry that they might miss out on that?
I do and I don't. They have friends, they have their cousins, and they have kids on the roads that they would be friends with. And they FaceTime their friends in school. they have their friend's mum's phone number saved into my phone, and they still stay in contact with them through this whole lockdown. They haven't seen them in person since school, but they've been still talking and they still all get along great and stuff. I don't think it would affect the kids socially if you took them out of school to homeschool them. It'd be different if you lived in the middle of nowhere and your kids were never going to get out to see a child. But basically, like, they're still going to see children and play out, like.
Okay, but you did ask for some advice on this whole thing. You say that you've gone to the point of getting the application form. By law here in Ireland, in fact, constitutionally here in Ireland, we're entitled to homeschool our children as long as they are getting an education and that you can verify that they're getting that education. And we know it is something that some people do. I don't know how widespread it is, but I'm going to try and find out a little bit more. So stay on the line there for 1 second, Paige, if you can, please. Because I'm joined on the line by Mary Aoife, and Mary Aoife was homeschooled from the age of 10. She's 20 now, is finished school. Good morning, Mary Aoife. Welcome to 98 FM.
Thank you very much. Delighted to be on.
Now, why was it that you were homeschooled from the age of 10?
But you know what? It was something I never thought of doing. I was in school and I just wasn't happy. The system wasn't really working for me, and I was becoming more and more unhappy as time was going on. So my parents came up with the idea. They knew someone who was home educating, and they just said, you know what? Why don't we take a couple of months out, see how you're getting on, see if you're learning a little bit better, to see if you become more happier. And they just put the idea to me, and I said, look, why not? Give it a go. So I kind of went from there.
So that decision, you were involved in that decision-making process.
I was. I was very unhappy, and I just wanted to try something for a little bit of time to see, how I'd get on, if my learning would improve, if, I find it just to become a little bit more happier within myself as well.
So it was your mother who did the homeschooling?
Well, initially, I suppose when we started off, we hadn't really a clue. We weren't too sure if we were to sit down at the table as a family, and Mum and Dad were the teachers. And we tried that approach at first, and we realised that it wasn't working for us. Mum and Dad were our parents, and it was really difficult for us to consider them as a teacher. So we began to look more into detail, and we realised that being homeschooled, all you're required is to receive the minimum of education. Mm-hmm. So that's to be able to read, to write, a little bit of math, etc. And it's up to you then whether you want to, do a full curriculum or, take an unschooling approach, which is, I suppose, left to the child to decide to follow their own interests, and the parents obviously guide them. So we ended up taking an approach of where we kind of did a bit of both. So we had the Irish curriculum there, and we would follow that, but I suppose we would also do it more of a time base. So we'd say, right, we want to get maybe this amount of work done by this amount of time, this length of time. But at the same time, there was no timetable. So, we could get up in the morning and say, do you know what, we feel like doing a bit of baking. We'd start off, do a bit of baking in the morning. And then it was directed by myself and my brother, and my parents were there to kind of steer us, make sure we were getting the work done, but making sure we were doing, following our own interests at the same time.
Now, one of the things that I put to Paige a couple of minutes ago was the social aspect of school, which a lot of people consider nearly as important as the educational aspect of school.
Yes.
Do you feel that you missed out?
It's funny. That's a question that's put to me a lot. And I think I probably got on better socially out of school than I would have, if I continued in school, for a few reasons. First of all, yourself, in school, you're mixed with, 30, 32 children, all the same age, in some cases the same gender in one class. And there's a lot of competition. The children want to be heard. They're all competing with each other to have the most friends, to be popular or whatever. And then when you're, I suppose, in that environment, it's not really natural. With the homeschooling, we had homeschool meetups. We were meeting with children who were all different ages. There were 5, 6-year-olds, 17, 18-year-olds, all together, mixing more family orientated as well. And you become more, I suppose, sociable with different age groups. You also don't, I suppose, have the social pressure, the peer pressure. In school, everyone at the same age, the social media, there's a lot of peer pressure, and you have that with a chance to escape that kind of side, build up on your own personality, let yourself shine through. And of course, there's after-school activities. There's plenty of time, to do that. I'm also still in contact with my old school friends. So just because you're out of school doesn't mean that has to end there.
Okay, so you were homeschooled right up to the end of school age. Did you do a Leaving Cert?
I didn't do any state exams. I'm in college now. I suppose initially I had planned to do the Leaving Cert. The Junior Cert for me was never an option because you required a lot of coursework, and it would have been a lot of red tape trying to cross over the bits and pieces to get that done. So instead I did a couple of years, I suppose 2 years, full of different work experiences. I've tried everything. I just put myself out there, built up my CV, tried everything from law to teaching to acting, everything, just to give it a go. And when it came to, I suppose, the Leaving Cert, it was my intention to sit the Leaving Cert initially. But then when I became, I suppose, more aware of what I wanted to do, I wanted to do event management. And for the course itself, I was able to sit a PLC or a QQI course, go into that without a Leaving Cert, completed that and use the points I got from that to go into college. So I'm currently studying at TU Dublin in doing event management.
Okay, so because you knew what you wanted to do, you were able to focus specifically on that. Yeah. The key question, we were talking with Paige, who I'll go back to in a second, who is contemplating it, probably moved on by the whole COVID thing. Yeah. What does a parent have to do if they decide that they would like to homeschool their children?
Well, I think the first thing to realise is that nothing is set in stone. When I came out of school, I know certainly from my parents, they had no intention of homeschooling me for the full, if you like, all the way up to secondary school. So homeschooling, it can be a thing as short as 2 months. You could take the child out for 2 months, give it a go. You could take them out for a year. You could take them in and out, in and out. There's nothing that has to be set in stone. So the first thing is, obviously, as Paige has done, is contact Tulsa. And they come out and they do assessments. Now, the assessment, it's to assess the situation, not an educational, I suppose, assessment. So it's to make sure that the situation it's safe. It's an environment the child is living in where they can be educated, and to also ensure they are receiving the bare minimum of education. So to be able to read, to write, a bit of maths, the basics. And from there, it's basically up to each family. It's up to, I suppose, whatever suits you as a parent and your child as well.
So, for example, I was reading earlier on that you don't need to follow the national curriculum, you don't need to have a teaching degree, you don't need to cover every subject done in school. You just have to give your children a basic level of education.
Yeah, no, that's basically it. You can just be there to provide. Well, we found as a family, because a lot of people say to me, you must have been very self-motivated. What we had was one rule: no television or internet, TV, any of that during the school hours. Which meant then, if we were bored and mum and dad were around saying, look, you don't want to do the schoolwork, you can't watch TV, what would you like to do? And we had to become more creative, and we were saying, well, look, maybe let's bake, let's do some art, let's try and learn a musical instrument. So it gave more scope around to become more creative, and just try different new things when we were, and in that way, to try something new.
Okay, now here's another key question.
No problem.
If and when you yourself get to have children in the future, would you homeschool?
It's definitely something I would consider, but again, I think it's very much on each child's needs. Like, school works for some people, it doesn't work for other people. So it would depend on the situation and my child's own individual needs and wants, if I think it would suit them. And in the situation, again, there will be certain times where school might work out, where homeschooling might work out. And as I think Paige said as well, through her experience, there's days when being at home does not work, and you're there and you're just thinking, this is impossible, would I ever get anywhere? But I found myself, there was more happier days at home than those rough days. And you're going to get rough days everywhere in life, but personally, I found there was more happier days where I was more content, I was more relaxed.
Okay, let me bring back in Paige for a second. Paige, you mentioned that one of the reasons that you've looked at this whole thing is that you're feeling a bit uneasy about the children returning to school. Is this a conversation you would be having if it weren't for COVID-19? In other words, had you ever thought of homeschooling last year, for example?
No, I thought of it before I've had kids. And then I just kind of went with the flow, just followed the usual routine of what everybody would do, like signing kids up for school, sending them to school. But I've always loved doing stuff with them at home anyways, like experiments, like science experiments and stuff. But now that all this has came up, it's made me realise that I would actually love to do it with them at home rather than send them in. I think they get a lot more acknowledgement for their work when it's like one-on-one and it's less children, because you're in a class of 30 kids and they some kids get kind of looked past and they don't get acknowledged as much as they would if it was a smaller class or whatever. Like, so I think it just seems like it would benefit them so much more to have them at home and do everything.
And in fact, Mary Eva, as somebody who was homeschooled, do you believe ultimately that you benefited from it rather than being at school?
I personally do. I find like in college I'm much more motivated to do the work. I'm very interested. I have a huge range of experiences and skills that I gathered just by being at home. I was able to follow my own interests, try a lot of different things. I had time to learn how to play the flute, just try different things. And I suppose family-wise as well, I became much more closer with my family, and I just became much more enthusiastic for learning. Learning for me before homeschooling, it was always something I hated. I hated the fact I had to take out a maths book. But suddenly there was no time limit. If I wanted to sit down all morning and spend time doing maths, because I was interested in it, I could. There was no 40 minutes, next subject.
Yes,
I could sit down really.
Okay, so ultimately you think you benefited from the whole experience. So your advice to Paige would be, obviously she's made the initial contact and the assessment with Toolster will follow, but your advice would be try it. Don't necessarily commit to it long term. Give it a try and see how it goes. And is that something you're looking at doing, Paige? To give it a try?
Yeah, I would like to give it a try, because I think it's less stress on the children and less pressure on them to do things. Because you know yourself, like when you're in school, there's subjects that you don't really like and they're not a necessity to life really, and they have to spend an hour on it a day or so on. Whereas at home, you can kind of fit the subjects to fit the kids and do different activities with it to suit them. Because a teacher in a classroom, she can't change the way she's going to teach for just one child. Whereas I can change the way I'm going to teach subjects for my one child. Rather than you said you suit the whole classroom.
You said you've two, they're 5 and 7.
5 and 7, yeah.
Have you had a conversation over this?
Yeah, I've said it to them before. They loved homeschooling. They loved doing it at home, because I'd have a timetable wrote up for each of them where I'd write down for the whole week what I'm going to do every day with them. And then we bring an experiment in with it, and we do like making a volcano explode or baking, or we've done lots of different things, and they loved it. Like, they really enjoyed it. And my eldest daughter, she has a bit of trouble with adapting to change and with her reading and writing and stuff. But it was like she used to get upset when she was doing her homework, whereas now it's more laid back and she can relax doing it. She doesn't feel like under pressure. Everyone else's handwriting is getting compared to hers.
Well, you've heard a success story, if you like, with Mary Eva. You have already started the ball rolling. I would be fascinated, Paige, to talk to you in a couple of months' time, maybe early next year, if you go ahead with this, and find out how you're getting on, how the kids are getting on, and whether or not it is working for you. But let me just, I want to just play a couple of WhatsApp voice notes before I let you go. This is from Anthony.
Hi guys, Anthony here from Clondalkin. Is she so concerned about her children interacting with other kids in school, weary of them picking up the virus? Why is she allowing her children out on the roads to play with her friends and interact with the cousins? I mean, what's the difference? I think people just need to get a grip and kind of just send the kids back to school. Anyway, that's my opinion.
All right, Anthony,
Talk
thank
to
you.
someone.
So he's basically saying you're being a little bit overcautious.
Yeah, I don't agree with that because there's a big, big difference between letting your child play with a child that lives 2 doors down from you than sending them into the school with 200 children in it. That's a big jump, like a really big jump. And one of my main reasons is not about my child catching the coronavirus. They are healthy kids and we're a healthy family, and catching the coronavirus is not the main factor in wanting to homeschool them. It's the change in the structure. The whole thing is just up in the air, if you ask me.
Okay, but let me have a listen to another message from Tracy, who also is considering homeschooling.
Hi, Adrian. I'm actually considering keeping the kids home and homeschooling them for the next few months now. I can, because I'm not in work, so I can stay home and spend time with them. Just like when we were all on lockdown there, like we actually managed to get work done that one of my boys had really struggled with in school, like with division and learning the clock, silly things like that he couldn't grasp in school, that we actually grasped ourselves at home. Like, I know the social aspect of it is kind of, you're thinking, they won't be with their friends. But to be fair, they're not going to be allowed mix. They're not going to be mixing out in the yard. There's no PE really in school, like the contact sport kind of thing. And if one of my little fellas, if he's in one bubble and his best friend is across the school in another one, across the classroom, sure, he's not going to be able to mix with that, and that'll be quite upsetting for them as well. So it's really looking good for me as well to keep them at home and homeschool them, to be fair, at the minute anyway. See how it goes.
All right, Tracy, thanks very much indeed. And Mary Eve, I really appreciate you taking our call. It's been an interesting insight into from somebody educated at home how it has worked out for you. And Paige, as I said, you've started the ball rolling. You've filled out the forms and all of that. Like I said, I would love to talk to you again in a couple of months' time to see whether this was a good thing or not. But as Mary Eve has said, it doesn't have to be permanent. You can suck it and see and give it a try. And like I said, we all have a constitutional right to home educate our children if we so choose. Paige, I wish you well, and thanks very much indeed for raising a very interesting issue that doesn't get talked about very much.
Great, thanks very much.
All right, lovely to talk to you. Thanks very much indeed. And Mary Aoife, thank you very much indeed. Interesting. Very, very interesting. You're listening to 98 FM's Dublin Talks. This is Adrian Kennedy. We're here till midday today. Now, if you've been listening to the programme a lot lately, you will know that we here at 98 FM on Dublin Talks are saying, come here to me, Dublin. We've teamed up with visitdublin.com as we discover what our city has to offer, our city and county. And this morning, we're looking for your tips, suggestions and recommendations for the best places, activities and things to do in Dublin North Coast, Dublin's North Coast. So, I'm looking for suggestions from you about things that we can do on Dublin's North Coast. We've looked at the city, north and south of the city. Now I want to look at the north side of Dublin along the coast and what you would recommend for places to go, places to see, things to do in North County Dublin along the North Coast. So, send me a WhatsApp voice note to 0877 98 98 98. 0877 98 98 98. I want you to imagine a tourist comes to you and they say, I'll be around the Fingal area. What would you recommend? Well, what would you recommend? If you're a taxi driver and you pick up somebody from the airport, what would you recommend? You can send me a WhatsApp voice note right now to 0877 98 98 98. What would you recommend in North County Dublin, along the coastal area, for people to do? Places to go, things to see. Send me a WhatsApp voice note right now to 0877 98 98 98.
The sound of the city, from Furhouse to Finglas. This is 98 FM's Dublin Talks with Adrian Kennedy.
And we're here till midday today. I'm looking for your help. Okay? We are involved in a campaign with visitdublin.com where we're saying, come here to me, Dublin. This morning, I am looking for your tips, suggestions and recommendations for the best places, things and activities to do here in Dublin on the north coast, on Dublin's north coast. So, for example, my favourite place in the whole of North County Dublin is Skerries. I love Skerries. I love sitting down, having a bite to eat, especially when the weather is nice. I love to walk along the beach and walk out for miles some days when the tide is out. I love Skerries, full stop. I love everything about it. One thing that you can do, which is something I haven't done in Skerries, is to visit the Skerries Mills, which I'll have to put down on my bucket list. But as I said, I love nothing more. My favourite place in the whole of North County Dublin is out in Skerries, to take a stroll along the beach, to sit down, have a bite to eat, especially if you can sit outdoors, have a lovely storm and a teacup ice cream, and I just love Skerries. It's my favourite place in Dublin. So with that in mind, I'm looking for your suggestions. Something that you would recommend to a tourist to see or do on the north coast of Dublin. Okay, so send me a WhatsApp voice note right now to 0877 98 98 98. 0877 98 98 98. Where in North County Dublin, along the coast in Fingal, would you recommend somebody visit? Okay, that's what I'm looking for, your suggestions. So, for example, Des says Ardgillan Castle in Balbriggan, lovely walks, gardens, playground and amazing views of the sea, says Des. Now, I have to say, Des, I visit Balbriggan quite a lot, and I've never been into Ardgillan, believe it or not. So it's the Ardgillan Domain in Balbriggan, and Des describes it as having lovely walks, gardens, playground and amazing views of the sea. So I'm going to mark that one off as somewhere that I'd need to visit on the north of County Dublin. Keep your suggestions coming in to 0877 98 98 98. Where in North County Dublin would you recommend that a tourist might visit? Okay, where in North County Dublin would you recommend that a tourist might visit? So Ardgillan Domain in Balbriggan has been suggested. Another suggestion is to take a boat trip out to Ireland's Eye. Great way to spend a day, or get a boat out to Lambay Island for a day trip, says Martina. Okay, it's a great suggestion, Martina, and something that I'd love to do myself, to be quite honest with you. In fact, I'm writing all these down. Malahide Castle is another suggestion. It's a beautiful place to walk as well. Newbridge House and Gardens is also suggested. The casino at Malahide is worth visiting, say a number of suggestions about the casino in Malahide. Newbridge Park and Animal Farm is another suggestion of somewhere to visit in the north of County Dublin. This is from Claire.
Hey there, Claire here. I just want to recommend in North County Dublin the cliff walk from Portrane to Donabate. It's really spectacular. The views are beautiful. You can see Lambay Island, you can see Howth on a really clear day. It really is stunning, and it's kind of a really good secret of North County Dublin.
It is a beautiful place to walk, I have to say. And, for people from the south side to come over and have a walk around the north side. I know for many, many years I was a south sider. I'm now an adopted north sider, and I didn't know the north of County Dublin terribly well at all, and I do now. I've been to most decent places in North County Dublin, and I love it. People go on about the south side, about Dalkey and Vico Road and all that, and yes, it's all lovely, but It is the north of the county is just as nice. The cliff walk from the top of Howth down to the village is another suggestion, which is a great suggestion. Newbridge Park and Animal Farm. The marina in Malahide is beautiful out around there. It really is. And can anyone say if it's possible to get a boat trip to Lambay Island for a day trip? I heard you can see wallabies there. I don't think you can see wallabies on Lambay, can you? Are wallabies Australian? Anyway, more suggestions coming in include... we mentioned Skerries Mills, restaurants, bars, cafes for afternoon tea out around Skerries and all of North County Dublin. Skerries Mills, I have to go there. Shane's Howth hikes and e-bikes out in Howth. As we said, the walks along the cliff in Howth, just fantastic. Dollymount. Why has nobody mentioned Dollymount? Kite surfing in Dollymount. What a cool thing to do. And there's lots of golf courses in North County Dublin and lots more besides. So there you go. They're just some of your suggestions of places to see and things to do in North County Dublin. And there are an awful lot of them. So thank you very much indeed. And apparently, I stand corrected, apparently there are wallabies on Lambay. But it's a very private island. There are no day trips. Okay, I never ever knew that there were wallabies on Lambay. And yes, you can get a day trip to Lambay from Skerries, and there are wallabies out there. So yes, apparently there are. I'll have to go. I haven't been. Thanks very much indeed, all of you, for all of your messages and some great suggestions on things and places to visit in North County Dublin. That's it from us for today. If you have anything you'd like to bring up on tomorrow morning's programme, send us an email right now to Dublin Talks at 98fm.com or send me a private message through our Facebook page at facebook.com/Adrian K and Jeremy D. Have a great Monday. I'll talk to you tomorrow morning at 10. Barry Dunn is on the way and he's got some great music in the next hour like these.
FM.